Alright guys, I haven't done one of these in a while, so I wanted to cover a few things at once. I had a few questions about a few of these things, so I want to check out or review AlphaLock, show you how masks work, and what the difference is between masks and clipping masks. So let's go ahead and talk about AlphaLock first. So I went ahead and just made this sort of blobby painty thing right here. Let me grab a darker color and let me grab a different brush. Now, if I'm going to go ahead and paint over this brush is going to paint over that image that I had down there before. Sometimes we want it to stay inside the bounds of our art. So let's do this. Let's go click and go AlphaLock. You'll see that my background has turned to this checkerboard pattern. That tells me that AlphaLock is turned on. Now when I go ahead and paint, what's going to happen is my little cool airbrush thing is only going to stay on those pixels that are painted on that surface. If I turn AlphaLock off, now I can paint outside of that surface. So the brush I used before had some texture to it, so it has some dark spots and it has some light spots. So when I have AlphaLock turned on, when I paint over it, it's only going to sit in those dark spots and it's not going to hit the light spots. So you can get some pretty cool effects. A quick tip too, if you want to turn your AlphaLock on and off, use two fingers, a quick swipe to the right. You can see my checkerboard went off. And I can go ahead and paint over the top. If I do two finger swipe to the right, my AlphaLock is turned on and I am painting on top of that stuff. Now, sometimes you don't want to sort of mess with your art that's below here. Let me back up. Sometimes you don't want to mess with this art. I call it the least destructive way to create a file. So I'm going to make a new layer. And what I'm going to do here is I'm going to create a clipping mask. You'll see a little arrow pops up, and that tells me whatever I paint on layer 12 is only going to show up on stuff that's on layer 11. So I got this turquoise color, I got my airbrush, I'm going to go ahead and paint. It's the same idea with the AlphaLock, but it's a little bit less destructive. So now I can turn this off, I can go ahead and change a color, and it will only affect what's below. Now the cool part, maybe not so cool part, I turn my clipping mask off, you can see that it goes back to as if it were its own layer. Clipping mask back on, and now it's only going to be affected the layer that is underneath. So using this guy here, let's talk about a mask then. So we went through AlphaLock, we went through clipping mask. Now let's go ahead and talk about a mask. Now this one's a little bit different. If you have any Photoshop experience, it's very much like the clipping masks in Photoshop. So I click on mask, you'll see that a new layer is formed that's attached to layer 10. And everything is white. On a clipping mask, Photoshop they're called clipping masks, and here they're called masks. It's a little bit different. With a mask, if I paint with white, it's going to show up. If I paint with black, it's going to go away. So I just got my soft airbrush, I have black. Now when I go ahead and paint, I'm making that part of the image disappear. Now, if I switch this to white, I'm on the clipping mask layer, not on layer 10, but clipping mask, I can add back to my layer. If I go ahead and clear it, it's going to go back that way. If I delete it, it'll go back to its original form. What I think is really cool about masks is I can pick a gray. I'm on layer mask. I can go ahead and paint, and now it'll do sort of like a 50% fill for me. I can move to a darker, and it'll keep going a little bit more. I can go up here. So it's kind of the opposite. Remember, white is going to add, black is going to take away. I always forget which is which. That's why I always do a quick scribble first. But you can always kind of see it just practicing real quick. I have black selected here. I'm going to go fill layer. The whole thing looks like it's gone, but it isn't. I'm going to go ahead and start painting, and it'll show up underneath. Why would you want to do something like that? A lot of times for photos, if I want to remove a background, I have black selected and take my airbrush. I can go ahead and start taking it away. And I can start removing this. So this is a quick way to kind of take a background out. I could get a little more detail if I wanted to. Get right in here. Really make it nice and perfect. This is kind of a Photoshop trick. But that's one way I could do it too. And if I mess up and do something like that, I can switch it to white and I can go ahead and fill it back in. One last thing, let me remove this clipping mask, move this up here. I'm going to turn this on, this on, this on, and I have this cool texture layer here too. All this is a photo that I've put in, plus sign, wrench, insert photo, and it could be a texture photo. I actually have lots of files as well. Insert file, let's go back, brown paper from the internet, we'll just pick this brown paper here. So I like using these for textures over images. Right here are my blending modes. I talked about these a little bit before, but there's a lot of them. These are taken from the Photoshop world. I only use a couple. One of them is multiply. Multiply will take away all of the white in your image. So right now all my white is taken away, only my darks are showing. That's why I like to use on these textures here, so it makes it look like it's on actual cardboard, which is pretty cool. I also can put some paper texture in here, so when I zoom in it looks like my artwork is sitting on a canvas, which is pretty cool too. This one might be a little better. There we go. Now it looks like I drew on a piece of paper. That's just the blending modes, and those are sitting up in here, and there's a ton of them. If you really want to get the nitty-gritty of what each one of these does, you can go to Procreate's website. They have each one explained, like 2 paragraphs a piece. I just like to go in and go, oh hey, that looks cool, that looks cool, that looks cool, that doesn't, oh that doesn't do anything for me. I just kind of play with all of them until I get one that I like. That's really about it. So, hope that helps. Happy arting.